Hello everybody and welcome to the first video in our series of videos on the Renaissance. As always, we begin with our learning outcomes, so by the end of this presentation you guys should know what the Renaissance means, when it roughly happened and where it began. Second, you guys should know the 5 reasons why it began where it did, and finally you guys should know what humanism is. So, what was the Renaissance? Well, let's start with the word. So the word Renaissance means rebirth, and this can be taken to mean many things, and everybody has their own interpretation of it. But a generally accepted definition of this time would be a rebirth in Europe of interest and knowledge of art, science, technology, biology, literature, and philosophy. Now, another question we need to look at is, when did the Renaissance take place? So we have just finished the Middle Ages, which we usually date from the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 CE, which we usually round up to 500 CE, to Columbus's discovery of America in 1492 and the Gama's route to India in 1498, again, which we usually round up to 1500 CE. After that, we tend to classify the next age as the early modern age, which goes from 1500 CE, which would be Columbus' discovery of America and the Gama's route to India, all the way up until the fall of Napoleon in 1850. But the Renaissance, it actually straddles both these ages, and our primary focus will go from 1450 to 1550 CE, so that 100-year period. However, it is really important to note that the Renaissance doesn't end in 1550. It never really ends. It just kind of evolves as all the different areas like art and technology and science and philosophy, they branch off and evolve into these new things. So we have defined the Renaissance. We have mentioned the time period that we will be looking at, so roughly 1450 to 1550. Now the next question is, where did the Renaissance take place? The short answer is Italy. Now, as we continue our study, we will see that the Renaissance reaches all across Western Europe, but we will be starting by looking at the place where it began here in Italy. So why did it begin in Italy? There are generally 5 key points that historians point to for it happening here. The first of these is the makeup of Italy at the time of the Renaissance. At this point, Italy was not one unified country, but instead a collection of powerful city-states. Now, a city-state is a small state that is independently ruled by a major city. Now, the most powerful city-states were Florence, Genoa, Milan, Naples, Venice, and Rome, which was known as the Papal States, as it was ruled by the papacy or the Pope. Now, city-states like Genoa and Venice, they became very important due to their trading activities. We saw in our study of the Middle Ages how the Venetians had hijacked the Fourth Crusade to the Holy Land for their benefit. And we also saw how Genoa had established an important trading post opposite Constantinople here at Galata. Well, Genoa and Venice were both republics, so that means that they didn't have kings. Their leader was elected. He was sometimes elected for life, and he was called a doge. Genoa and Venice were bitter rivals and were in constant warfare with each other between the period of 1236 and 1381. However, these cities they developed into vibrant cities with a lot of people passing through and influencing the evolution of the cities and bringing great wealth. Rome was the home of the Pope, and it expanded its territory greatly during the Renaissance period, especially under the warrior Pope Julius II, who we will meet again. Venice and Milan became powerful through developing banking and trading, which we'll be looking at in greater detail in a later video, while Naples joined with the Kingdom of Aragon in 1442 to become a powerful force in the Mediterranean. So the power and the vibrancy of the city-states were a big factor in the Renaissance. The second big factor was the wealth of these city-states, which we will look at in greater detail in our next video. Also, An important factor that we will consider in another video is the invention of the printing press, which is a revolutionary thing, which we could say is kind of comparable to the invention of the internet. So another big factor was the fall of Constantinople. This is our fourth big factor, the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire. We saw throughout the crusades of the Middle Ages that the Christian armies of Western Europe would launch their attacks on the Holy Land from Constantinople, which is part of the Christian Byzantine Empire. But the impenetrable walls of Constantinople had finally fallen to the brilliant Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II in 1453. And with the fall of Constantinople, many scholars who had for 1,000 years kept the learning of ancient Greece and Rome alive in Constantinople, they fled to Italy with their ancient manuscripts and their learning, sparking inspiration and opening up new or rediscovered knowledge to the artists and thinkers of Renaissance Italy. Finally, another source of inspiration and our final factor was the inspiration drawn from the magnificent ruins around the city, like the Colosseum or the Pantheon, that artists at the times began to study, which we saw in our study of ancient Rome. A final influence at the time that we were looking at was the development of a humanist philosophy. Now, humanists wanted to turn their attention to understanding human nature. Now, up until this point, the most learned people in Western Europe concerned themselves with questions of God, from thinkers like Thomas Aquinas to Anselm. However, humanists put an emphasis on studying the humanities, which were subjects like grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and philosophy, and not just of God, but of bigger questions. One of the early humanists, Petrarch, said at this time that books have led some to learning and others to madness, which I think is an apt way of looking at this time. While there is going to be great learning, there's also going to be great madness also. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. So by now you guys should know what the Renaissance means, when it roughly began and where it began. You guys should know the 5 reasons why it began in Italy. And finally, you guys should know what humanism is. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something good from this video.